Adam, thank you very much for chatting to us today. I know you have a very hectic schedule over here. I think you're the most wanted Australian man in Ireland and the UK. What's the purpose of your visit here to Ireland?
Well, thanks very much for your time. It's great to be able to talk to you. The purpose here is to develop a more meaningful relationship with the Irish Greyhound Board. So in doing that, I've been spending quite a bit of time with the board over the past few days and their senior management team. Presented to the board yesterday. I went to Shelbourne Park last night and I'll be going to Harold's Cross tonight. So there are issues in Australia, particularly around animal welfare and other issues, and you've been dealing with those for some time, so we're here to learn. And hopefully we're also here to impart some knowledge from our perspective, which will help the IGB.
Brilliant. And you're the CEO of the GRV. And can you tell us a little bit about the structure of that?
Sure. So I've been the CEO for about 12 months now. I was a CEO back in the late 90s as well, so I've come back for another stint. The structure is such that the Minister for Racing, which happens to be the Premier of Victoria, who kept the portfolio for racing, which was fantastic for us. He appoints our board.
Yeah.
It's a 5-person board, all appointed by the Minister for a term of 3 years. And then the board appoints the CEO with the approval of the Minister. And then I appoint the staff at GRV. I have a senior management team consisting of 7 members across each of our departments, and the staff reports through the senior managers to myself. We've got about 63 full-time staff and many part-time staff.
Excellent. Your board is political, but how is it actually selected?
Yeah, it's political in the sense that the Minister of the day appoints the board, and within the Racing Act, within the legislation, there is specifics around who those persons are. So of the 5-person board, 2 people must have greyhound racing experience. So they could be an owner, a trainer or a breeder. They could be an administrator. 2 people. 2 of the others must have some sort of business experience, marketing, finance.
Yeah.
And the chairman then is also an independently appointed chairman. So that's the 5 persons with a mix of business and some greyhound understanding.
Which is essential.
Yeah, it's good.
And how do the owners contribute, to the GRV?
Yeah, we have a very good relationship with our Owner Trainer Breeders Association called the GOTBA. I think there's a similar organisation here in Ireland. And we have a very structured arrangement where we'll meet with them regularly on a quarterly basis. The President and I talk quite frequently. If they have any concerns or any issues, they're very free to address those through me or through my chairman, Peter Kayard. So we've formalised that relationship because it's important, I think, that it be structured.
Definitely.
And it works quite well.
How big is the greyhound industry in Victoria?
Well, it's significant. It's, when you compare it certainly to the Irish greyhound industry, it's sizable. Very different though, because our financial model is largely driven from people betting away from the track through the tote.
Okay.
So Victorians will bet 900 million Australian dollars per year on greyhound racing. And of course there's a joint venture agreement between the 3 codes of Australian racing: thoroughbreds, harness racing and greyhound racing. We have a joint venture agreement with our TAB, with our tote, and we receive a percentage of those profits that come back to greyhound racing. They come back to GRV and we determine what prize money levels are set for the industry. So in next financial year we'll pay 39.5 million Australian dollars for prize money across our 13 tracks.
And I think in Ireland it's substantially less than that. I think it's about 7 million, I think.
Yeah, totally different model though, isn't it? It's a bookmaker model, and we have largely a totalisator model. Having said that, the corporate bookmakers, Bet365s and the Bet30s and others, are now very much in Australia and Victoria, and we're getting our appropriate percentage of their turnover back to greyhound racing.
And is that largely where the prize money comes from?
The prize money largely comes from the money we get through our commercial arrangement with people betting on greyhound racing via the tote.
Brilliant. And the tote, like our tote system is called TAB over there. And like, how exactly does that work? Can you put on a win bet? Is it similar to our tote over here?
Correct, yeah. So there's a lot of what you call bookmaker shops. We have tote shops or TAB shops, and there's thousands of those throughout Australia and thousands in Victoria. and there'll be a bet placed at the tote, a win place, Quadrella, your forecast, Quadrella, multiple opportunities to have a bet. And it works fantastically well in Australia, and we get our fair share.
And if someone, say, put on like maybe $500, is it going to affect it overall?
In most cases it won't, no, because the pool will be big enough to be able to cope with a $500 bet. In a small country track, on not the best race night, there may be some change, but generally speaking, a bet of that size isn't going to affect the outcome, won't affect it much.
Okay. And the crowds at the tracks, would you have, large numbers at all of the meetings, or, are they smaller numbers? They're
smaller numbers. Victorian and Australian is mostly an off-course market. That's where our money comes from, and we conduct that business very well, and we put our meetings on to maximise the benefit. But what we've seen recently is we've been promoting our major events extremely well. GRV's marketing departments worked well with the club's marketing departments.
Okay.
And that we've had some great results. We've had thousands of people at our city track, the Meadows. They still get a very good crowd on a Saturday night. They do it very well. And the Melbourne Cup, which everyone knows at Sandown Park, $350,000 Australian dollars to the winner.
Wow.
In November, we got 5,000 people there through the great work of Sandown and GRV. So week in, week out, the crowds aren't terrific, but for the big races, we do quite well.
And does the GRV, do they own any of the tracks?
No, we don't. It's quite different to the setup here in Ireland. The tracks are independently managed by volunteer committees.
Okay.
And those committees appoint their own staff, and they run the tracks, or the clubs. And GRV registers those clubs on an annual basis, and that's how we link. They're obligated to manage their business in accordance with our rules, and we provide funding towards those clubs to offset prize money and capital investment, infrastructure and other things, marketing and other things.
On a nightly basis, how many dogs would be tested?
It depends, and it largely relates to the discretion of the stewards. So the stewards determine ultimately which greyhounds are tested. We have a regime where most of our samples are taken post-race.
Okay.
So a greyhound race will be conducted. The stewards will determine which greyhounds they want to sample. Greyhounds will be kennelled for a period of time, locked away, and then the sample will be taken. We also do pre-race sampling, and we've just started doing out of competition testing.
Oh, very good.
So the stewards can arrive at the premises of a trainer and take samples pre-race meeting.
Just randomly?
Randomly.
Yeah.
And those samples will be taken and tested. Importantly, we've also introduced freezing samples, so that we'll take samples today and we'll freeze them to the point where we might test them in 1 or 2 years' time, where technology is such which is caught up potentially and we can get a result. Now our rules allow for that. Trainers understand that and know that, and I think it's a fantastic tick in the box for integrity.
Yeah. Definitely. And on a night at the races, how many stewards would be there?
So we have 8 full-time stewards. You'd have at least one from that panel at the race meeting, and you'll have at least 2 others supporting the part-time stewards supporting that particular part-time steward. And they're under the rules, they're in charge of the meeting. So anything the steward wants goes. Typically they'll watch the race. The performance of a greyhound, they'll interview the trainer immediately after the race.
And what do you think are the necessary ingredients for a successful, say, international betting product?
Well, I think whatever's successful for an international product should be successful for the local product. So integrity's king.
Has to start at home, yeah.
Yeah, it does. Integrity's king. So it's very important that, particularly where we come from, because the public are betting so much on greyhound racing, it's a significant part of our budget, and it's a very important part of our business that the integrity of greyhound racing is the best it can ever be.
Of course.
So you've got to be sampling. You've got to be sampling as much as you can. We do about we'll do about 3,300 swabs this year. We did a little bit under that last year. We had 10 positive results. It's a very small percentage, which is very good. So whatever we're doing suggests is working. And you've got to have a presence at the race meeting, and you've got to be conducting whatever investigations you need to conduct very quickly after things happen and get the result and move on. And our rules allow us to do that. I think there's an opportunity from GRV's perspective to assist with the IGB around rules, because there seems to be some sort of delay in the changing of rules or the making of rules, and we don't have that in Victoria or Australia. If the board wants to make a change to its rules, it can do so very quickly. And its business can flow and evolve and move forward. So we can potentially offer that advice and expertise to the IGB to improve their situation.
What happens if a dog tests positive in Victoria?
Okay, well, firstly, the stewards will get the advice from the laboratory. The laboratory is such where the 3 codes of racing has its testing done: harness racing, thoroughbred racing and greyhound racing. Again, the Minister jointly funds that, which is fantastic. The Chief Steward will get that advice from the laboratory. He'll hand it to the person concerned, and that person concerned will then go through an investigation process. The important rule in Australia says that if you brought a dog to the track to race with a drug in its system, you're guilty of an offence. So on that basis, if the drug is proven and the expert drug chemists give their advice and it's accepted, that person is guilty, and the dog is disqualified from the race, and the prize money is withheld subject to that particular period. And then the rule talks about whether the person administered the drug or not, and then we get on to penalty. But simply put, if you brought a dog to the races and it had a drug, you're guilty.
If someone from Ireland wants to go over to Australia and train greyhounds, how simple is it to set up?
Well, we'd welcome them, of course. There are areas within Victoria that are easier than others. Some local councils make it difficult to establish greyhound establishments. But at the moment, actually, we're working with the local government and the state government to make that process a bit easier, and to have designated areas where greyhound people can establish their premises and conduct their business. But that's an ongoing issue, and it's probably be resolved within the next 12 months or so.
Brilliant. The grading system in Australia, what way does that work?
Yeah, it's been around for quite some time, generally speaking. There's been a few changes, but you win your maiden race, you're a grade 5. You're a grade 5 everywhere. You win your grade 5 at a particular track and distance, and you're a grade 4 at that track and distance. You go back there next week and win the grade 4, you're a grade 3, and you're eligible for the better class races. But you're still a grade 5 elsewhere, which will enable
in all of the other tracks.
Which enables then for you to win those go to another venue and win those grade 5 races. So it's quite good. We have also tier 3 racing, which is set on a time standard. And they're usually for either the younger greyhounds or the older greyhounds, and it provides an opportunity for greyhounds to extend their racing career. So it's very good.
Brilliant. And I've heard a little bit about the programme, The Catching Pen. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
The Catching Pen is a half an hour program that's run by Sky Channel, the broadcaster in Australia. They produce it and manage it themselves. It comes out of Sydney in New South Wales, out of their studios. And it's a weekly program hosted by a couple of media greyhound identities.
Brilliant.
And a lot of people tune in and watch it. It's fantastic. We don't have any input into it, but if I want to do an announcement of some sort, prize money increase or some other announcement, they're very grateful in giving us the time, and we'll go and do a piece on that show.
Do you take advantage of the social media to promote GRV?
Yes, we do actually. We've been a bit slow in reacting to social media, but now we have our Twitter, and we're live on Facebook and YouTube, and so far so good. We've hit all our KPIs, so we've got a lot of people following us. A bit slow in the YouTube clips, but in the other two we're doing extremely well.
Great.
From our perspective, it's important to be in that media space. we need a new customer. We need the younger generation. And it's just one of the ways in which we hopefully will attract those people to greyhound racing, whether betting, whether owning, whether going to a race, having a meal, having a drink, in whatever way. We'd like them to experience greyhound racing and hopefully have a good experience. You
used to run an international carnival back in the late 1990s. Can you see anything like that happening again?
I think it'd be fantastic. It was great for a few years, where we had greyhounds from England, Ireland and America come to participate against Australian greyhounds in the late 90s, and people like Terry Corden and Pascal Taggart and Michael Field and Don Cuddy, all these people were involved. It was great. And there's been some talk about a World Cup of sorts. And I think there's a few obstacles to overcome. But I think it's a conversation that should be continued. It's great from an international relations perspective.
Definitely, yeah.
If the prize money's on offer, I'm sure it would be well supported.
I'm sure people would travel for it.
I think so. And it's a great marketing opportunity, I think, for greyhound racing worldwide. So we're happy to be involved in those discussions.
Brilliant. And I believe you were in Shelbourne Park last night. What do you think of the structure that we have in place over here? It's
pretty good. Yeah, actually, everyone was saying the crowd was going to be not what it should be, or Saturday night's a bigger crowd, but I was impressed last night. It was a beautiful meal. The crowd was a very young demographic, a lot of yelling and screaming.
Good.
So it was a good atmosphere.
Yeah.
So I had a good night. It was a fine night.
Do you think that the Australian tote model could work here, or is there anything that Ireland could take from your model?
Look, I think the tote model could work here, albeit it's a very entrenched bookmaker culture here. But if you look at things like wanting to improve prize money and infrastructure development and improve the financial well-being of the organisation, like the IGB, well, then you've got to have a good look at the tote system, because that's where the return is, and that's where we see it. You look at all the established racing countries around the world, like the French and the PMU, and they've got the tote system, and they return a significant amount of money by way of prize money, like we are able to do because of that tote system. Yeah.
And what about live streaming? Do you ever think that Ireland could possibly live stream into Australia?
Well, it's funny you say that, because it's one of the things that we've been talking about over the past few days. We've had a meeting between IGB and Sky Channel, which is the Australian racing broadcaster that own our international rights for greyhound racing. We've had a meeting with the three of us in London last week, and that's the very thing that we were talking about. So there's a little few more ticks in the boxes to take place, but we're looking at it seriously.
And do you think the time difference could interfere with it, maybe?
Time difference isn't great. The zone's not terrific, but any Irish racing with a few minor tweaks could come in reasonably early in the morning into Australia.
Adam, to finish up, how long do you think it's going to be before we see Australian greyhound racing live here in Ireland?
Well, sooner than later, I hope.
Good.
We have the time zone issues, and our rights are with Sky Channel in Australia, so they're talking with SIS. There's some Australian racing in the betting shops in London.
Oh, excellent.
Which I saw last week, and that's going reasonably well. So I'm not sure what that time frame is, but in terms of some Irish racing coming to Australia, hopefully that's within the next 6 months or so.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Well, safe trip back to Australia.
Oh, thanks very much.